take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Blackwell. And let me say Hotep Habaragani to my Africana studies colleagues, contemporaries, friends, and seekers after the truth all. And let me go on to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night and never ever goodbye, because I grow older. I have very trauma about that goodbye stuff. Having buried my wife in 2012 and found it a very traumatizing event in spite of my faith. However, I think you will forgive an old man for being leery of that type of trauma. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're located at 8916 South Main Street here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're being hosted by our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, of whom my good friend, the Reverend Dr. Della F. Hollinis, is the proud pastor. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm a reverend. I stick to my lane. I let the others do as they do. I don't condemn them. I don't throw shade on them. I just be me. And we thank you for coming across our broadcast, and we hope that you will find something in it that will brighten your day, all right? This is not, even though it is a social justice broadcast, it is not a preachy broadcast. Although we deal with the issues, we look at the issues as much as we can and try to shed some light. Although we encourage all of you to continue to dig and research for your own self. In other words, we're not dogmatic about it or pedantic. All right. Our scripture reading is in Luke chapter 12, the last clause of verse 1, which says simply, Jesus speaking to his disciples, beware ye of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. And please believe me, there is a great deal of hypocrisy going forth in our world today. I'm not going to read my Old Testament scriptures. I'm going to stick to my two New Testament scriptures, especially Ephesians 6 chapter, picking up the reading at verse 11 and verse 12. Verse 11 says, put on the whole armor of God, that ye might be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And please believe me, we have spiritual wickedness in high places today. And yes, the powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world, which includes all of our corporations and organizations and billionaires and the like, the powers behind the throne, are very much at work, and we need to be on our guard. This is where stay woke has a great effect. As this is the month of February is Black History Month, I thought we needed to cast some light on our black female heroines who have lighted us the way as we went through this dark world. In this broadcast, I want to talk about Barbara Sizemore, who passed away I think around 2008. But she was an educator who was born in the North, but did had a very big impact in the Chicago school system. And I'm going to read certain of her writings. I hope I don't bore you with it. but it stands to reason that these black female heroines must be mentioned. I also like to mention Miss Marva Collins, who also taught in the Chicago School District and did a fantastic job of educating our children, same children that the school district said needed to be in special class because they couldn't learn. But these two women refused to accept that type of indictment upon our children. For instance, the late Dr. Barbara Sizemore, taught that culture equals the sum total of artifacts which any group accumulates in its struggle for survival and autonomy. She observed that the group must combat the conditions in order to survive. And that means you must educate our children, you must educate our young adults, and you must educate the next generation. In order to be autonomous, this is Dr. Sizemore talking, the group must have within its control the means to assure its survival. The group must have the means to survive in nature, and for example, that means hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes, etc. And two, you must be able to survive war, the attacks by other men. Other men and women who might want to take your land, your water, and other natural resources that may be discoverable as valuable in the possession of the group for survival. Remember, all of these takings of other men may not be always at first be apparent as either malevolent or wrong. In other words, someone can come up talking to you about one thing, but maybe down the line you perceive, well, no, this is not right, and malevolent or wrong. It is if a group rather shows up at your door with guns and violence, then quite naturally you recognize the danger. But if they show up with pencil or laptop, you may not be aware of the danger that they pose. You may even entertain them until their intent becomes apparent. And remember, the pen has always been mightier than the sword. Case in point, the Sandersville Railroad Company down there in Sparta, Georgia, is currently in process of taking portions of Blaine and Diane Smith's land. Now, Mr. Blaine and Mrs. Diane Smith have owned 600 acres of property in Sparta, Georgia. It's been in their family since it was bought way back in the 1920s. Their predecessors were slaves, former slaves, and who had been fortunate enough or foresighted enough to buy some land and keep on buying land until they accumulated 600 acres. Let me not digress. Let me see. Here we go. Let me get back to where. Oh, the Smiths argued that the railroad did not have the right to take their land if they were not willing to sell. Straightforward, I want to buy your land. You say, I don't want to sell it. I want to rent your land. I don't want to rent it. I want to lease your land. I don't want to lease it. Cut and dry. My land, you can't tell me what to do with it, and you can't tell me to give it to you or sell it to you. Let us proceed. Let me see now. Did not have the right. However, under eminent domain, this is where we're going. Under eminent domain proceedings, a government or organization, corporation, can initiate proceedings to put forward a taking of private lands for public use. Stick a pin in that for a minute. Most of the eminent domain takings in the U.S. have unfortunately been at the expense of black communities. I kid you not, my sisters and brothers. Without exaggeration, all of the highway programs that built the major interstates that crisscross this nation now were built through black communities in the early days without any compensation to the black families who owned the houses. I remember my aunt and uncle, O'Connor, there in Houston, Texas, with O'Connor Martin. They had to give up their house and Fifth Ward because 59 was going through. They wouldn't put 59 someplace else. No, they want to put it right through that neighborhood. Fortunately, they were compensated, but that just goes to show you. I'm losing my spot here. Let me see. Black couple. Okay, terms like urban blight were used to describe lovely areas where black people had put down roots. Whether it was Tulsa, Oklahoma, Houston, Texas, or Los Angeles, California, wherever black people lived, the Federal Highway Administration took the right of way, justified or not, to separate communities and to kill black communities. The railroad was notorious for this type of taking not just black folks, of course, but especially poor communities, of which black people coming out of slavery were the predominant group, were targeted by those in Washington and state capitals across the nation for this type of exploitation. Okay, here in California, Los Angeles, where the 10 freeway goes all the way across the country, could have been built a mile or so south of what was then considered Sugar Hill. I'm talking about Los Angeles. But instead, it split that rich neighborhood because the white bigots who were in charge of selecting the areas through which the highway would proceed intentionally targeted all the black areas of the city, calling them slums or blighted areas. This Sugar Hill situation, this was where the movie stars, Hattie McDaniels and I forget his name now, Kingfish, all those people, Rochester Anderson, they had them houses, fine houses over there. But the bigots up in Sacramento and the bigots here in Los Angeles, very racist at that time, said, yeah, we're going to put that freeway right through their houses, where their houses are, and just tear up that neighborhood. And that's exactly what they proceeded to do. They tore up Sugar Hill. But instead, it split that rich neighborhood because the bigots who were in charge of selecting the areas through which the highway would proceed intentionally targeted all the black areas of the city, calling them slums or blighted areas. Yes, it was deliberate, arbitrary, and intentional. I hope I'm not repeating myself. Remember, a group has to be able to defend and control its resources. Put a pin in that. Now, when the Long Beach Freeway, 710 Freeway, which came up from Long Beach, California, when it got up to Valley Boulevard, it ended. And it has still ended. You know why? Because them rich white folks up there in San Marino would not let that state of California or even the federal government put that freeway through their houses. So that tells you that where the clout is, where the power lies, that they could stop that freeway dead. To this very hour, that freeway has not been connected to the 210 freeway because of the people who lived there said, no, we don't want you over here. All right. Like I said, you work your butt off to get a piece of property, piece of land on which to build or purchase a home. You get the down payment. You sign the 30-year contract and trust God that come what may, you're going to pay for this house and leave it to your children. Now you have a part of the American dream. But when the robber comes, you recognize the attacker does not have your best interest at heart. But when the attacker mails a document saying your land is being seized for public improvement, you may not recognize that he is a robber. 2, in fact, the general public is largely oblivious to the machinations of the bureaucracies that work out of sight to pilfer and steal your rights and resources from you. They tell you to work hard for the American dream, and then they systematically work to take that dream away from you. Taxes, fees, permits, homeowners association dues, and all that kind of stuff. All are ruses the government uses to undermine your rights as a property owner. You think I'm lying? Go check it out. I close with the situation. I want to address the situation in South Africa, in which President Ramaphosa is seizing lands from Afrikaners who violently displaced the original owners of the land, which is the same thing that the Europeans did to the native Indians here in the United States, what is now the United States, who violently displaced the original owners of the land with no compensation or recognition of ownership. In fact, the lands were seized violently back in the beginning in the 1880s, which were the Boers from Europe came into South Africa. It wasn't called South Africa at that time. These were the Boer white Europeans who invaded Africa and established themselves by force of arms. And they ruled in South Africa under apartheid system for a very long time, a very brutal time in which the blacks were displaced and were not allowed to own any property. 87% of the property that was in South Africa was owned by the apartheid white regime. And Ronald Reagan, when he was the president of the United States, supported that regime, and all the presidents before him had supported the white apartheid system, even though it was land forcefully, violently taken from its owners. Even Eisenhower. Okay, now when Mandela came to power, the power dynamics of the status quo was unchanged. And what I mean by that, Mandela had made a deal with, I wish I could think of his name, who was the president of South Africa. Both, I believe it was. Somebody gonna correct me. The people who had stolen the land remained in ownership of the land. In other words, the white folks didn't have to move. They didn't have to make any kind of accommodation. And the only thing that changed is that they took Botha down and they put Mandela up. But they kept the land, they kept the power. And just like if you go to Atlanta, Georgia, you see all them Negroes up there. The Negroes ain't in power. You know who got that power? The people that stay out, the other white folks that's out there in the other areas. They run Atlanta, Georgia. Negro just figurehead. I digress. An hectare of land is equivalent to 2.5 acres of land. A hectare. That's on the metric. Thank you, sir. Push that on over here. God bless you, my brother. God gonna get you some blessing. Little brother Joshua. Now, let me see. Hectare land, that's on the metric system. We are on the Dewey decimal system, and so we're behind time, we being in the United States. The Boers have handed down to their posterity millions of hectares of farmland that was stolen. The land is dormant and fallow. That means the people who own the land are not there. They may be in other countries. They have there in South Africa. They have a city called Urania, totally white, nobody in there but the white folks, and no black folks are allowed to be in there unless they're servile. But these people own millions of acres of land. So now Ramaphosa is taking that land. Not literally. He's taking the land and using it for public use. President Donald Trump takes issue with President Ramaphosa's policy. Now when I said hypocrisy, when Jesus said, beware the leaven of the Pharisee, which is hypocrisy. It is hypocritical for Donald Trump to criticize the president of another sovereign nation now. We all claim to believe in sovereignty. South Africa is a sovereign country. But of course, here's where the mess gets interesting. You see, Elon Musk is a South African. David Sachs is a South African. Peter Toole is a South African. But they're not in South Africa. You know where they are? They are right in the United States government, up there in Washington, D.C. And so they are behind the scenes, in other words. They got Trump as their puppet, and they're getting him to speak on their behalf to President Ramaphosa. You see what I'm talking about? Hypocrisy. This country, there was a lady that she just died, but in 2023, the company called Bailey. What's the name of that company? It's called Bailey. I think I got it down here. Point was, they wanted to take this black woman's land. That's the point I want to make, whether I can call the name of the company or not. They claimed that this woman's house was in their way. And they were building all of this modernistic condominium. And here's a poor black lady. Her husband had died by this time. And they had been in that house for 30 years. And then here comes this big conglomerate. I wish I could find it. The name of it. Oh, here it is. Bailey Point LLC. In 2023, they sued her for her land. On the eminent domain, they were going to take her land. And even though she has since passed away, the family was successful in defending themselves. Remember, one of the points of a group dynamic is the group must be able to defend their property rights, as Dr. Sizemore told us about. But I digress. Let me see. President Donald Trump takes issue with President Ramaphosa's policy and says the U.S. must institute a refugee plan for the Boers. Now, the Boers are the white folks there that stole the land from the black folks way back in the 1880s and cruelly murdered, victimized, slaughtered, butchered those people and drove them off of their land and dared them to come back. Just like we did to the Indians here, that's what the white folks did in South Africa. They put the Indians here on reservations, and they put the black South Africans in Bantustan. Am I digressing? Oh, let's see. Reselling. Okay, here's Donald Trump's policy, which is Elon Musk's policy, which is David Sachs' policy, which is Peter Toole's policy. They want to resettle the Boers, the white Boers, not the black ones, here in America. Okay. You see anything racist in this approach? All right. With full rights and privileges. And you know how white folks got rights and privileges that black folks do not enjoy. Even now, here, 5 minutes? Thank you, sir. in the United States of America. All right. But it is only for the white boys, not the black boys. See anything racist in this approach? At the least, it demonstrates a high degree of hypocrisy. Remember, Trump is deporting immigrants from here who have overstayed their visas or came here illegally. On the one hand, he wants all black and brown immigrants out, but at the same time, he is instituting policies at the behest of Elon Musk, etc., that will bring in other immigrants to be paid for at our expense. That includes the housing, clothes, jobs, food. And when you start checking into what they give refugees here in this country, why, it will make you angry because they get things that you can't get. He's putting out one group in order to bring in his favorite group. His favorite group is not blacks. His favorite group is not browns. That's why he's putting all these Mexicans out here. You see the Mexicans on YouTube crying about they voted for Trump, and then he done deported their mamas and their daddies and their husbands and their wives. They don't know where they at, but they voted for Donald Trump. Huh? Yeah, man. Look it out now. I know I got to close here. But what I want to address is the hypocrisy. He's putting out one group in order to bring in his favorite group. This is the same DEI applied to white folks that Trump decries when applied to black folks. Remember, culture is the sum of artifacts that a group accumulates for survival or autonomy. You must control nature, and you must be able to defend or protect your resources. So hats off to Mrs. Josephine Wright of Hilton Head, South Carolina, who, though now dead, was successful in defending her property from the Bailey Point LLC when they tried in 2023 to take her home. Remember, just because you don't see the gun doesn't mean you're not being robbed. Stay woke. All right, they done told me I got 5 minutes, so I know my time is up. But I wanted to get that in because this is Black History Month, and I wanted to talk about Miss Sizemore and Miss Marva Collins, and there's so many other hundreds of black female heroines unspoken of who fought the civil rights struggle, who were in the background, really backstage of the civil rights struggle, while the brethren were on the front strutting and parading. Even though Martin Luther King was the leader, titular head, come to find out his wife was very instrumental in his speech writing. All right, ain't gonna get into that. My thing is, if you're working on a job and they don't want to pay you, what you need to do is take Reverend Martin and consider the advice and don't fail. If they don't want to pay you what you're worth, please don't work further. All right? We out of here, Doc. Love you.